everyone. And I'm going to begin this evening by just sharing why myself and our partners behind me are here. We're here to talk about an extremely serious issue, and we want to show support, and we want to show a force to our families, our communities, our students and our staff and our schools. We also want to highlight and make sure that families are aware, and it's very clear, that school safety, social media, and threats are not to be taken lightly, and that we are all very serious. But young people and parents need to be aware that threats are not something that is fun. It's not something to pass the time or to be a source of amusement. It could have life-changing impacts. I really want to stress this evening for all of those who are tuned in that much of this is the result of our increased student anxiety and increased impact on the social and emotional wellness of children from the pandemic. We know that our young people nationwide are screaming because they have definitely been victims of the gaps in their periods of being in school for many of them, and the gaps in learning, and many of them have been catapulted to new grade spans and new grade levels. And here they are, back in school. Many of them have been victims of being at home, being secluded, not having the resources. And we're seeing the ramifications of all of that play out in our schools across the country. So locally, we are doing a multitude of things in each of our school districts here in the city of Aurora to support our young people and to deal with the social and emotional wellness, to try to limit the anxiety. But most importantly, we want our young people to know that this is not a way to reach out for attention. And we want to be sure to provide them with other opportunities. I'm going to now turn the microphone over to my neighbor, my counterpart, Dr. Jeff Craig, Superintendent of West Aurora School District 129.
Thank you, Dr. Norell. Good evening. I want to talk about the most recent incident that's very fresh on our minds that we've been working through today. We were made aware through the statewide Terrorism and Intelligence Center about a TikTok threat going around the nation, and state police, the Illinois State Police, deemed it not a credible threat to any schools in the state of Illinois. But we take all of those opportunities and all of that information very seriously. So we crafted a message, created a video to our students, our staff, our parents, our community, and talked about the importance, as Dr. Norell just mentioned, of we don't take these hoaxes and think it's funny. This is not something that we just brush off, and we take them all very seriously. So we did our communication, we took precautionary measures, and then we asked all of our police partners to have an extra presence in all 18 of our schools today, just in and out of the neighborhoods. This morning, shortly after 9 a.m., we were made aware that there was a photo that was airdropped, and it had a specific threat to West Aurora High School. And the post was a picture of a gun. It was taken in a bathroom and had very identifying remarks to the West Aurora community. We immediately contacted law enforcement and put our students in a hold-in place and teach, and we secured our building. For nearly 3 hours, our 3,700 students lost out on academic experiences, lunch breaks were delayed, and it created undue stress on our entire school community of students, staff, and parents. Through our processes and our collaboration with the Aurora Police Department, we determined that the photo was a previous post from February of 2020 from El Paso, Texas. The Aurora Police Department and building staff then moved to identify those responsible, and our staff created an abbreviated schedule and then released students to a normal movement. Our partners in this investigation, the Aurora Police Department, will continue to follow up on this and identifying all those individuals responsible for this disruption today. So with that, I want to turn it over to Aurora Police Chief Cross.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. Good evening. As Dr. Craig mentioned this morning, our school resource officer was contacted by school administration regarding reports from students that they had received the picture that Dr. Craig mentioned. Our school resource officer immediately requested more officers to the school, did a preliminary search of the building, and began our investigation by talking to people who had received the picture and reviewing the evidence. As we continued our investigation, our Critical Incident Intelligence Center learned that the picture of someone holding a gun in the bathroom was actually the same photo from a school threat in El Paso, Texas in 2020. And someone had placed text over the top that referenced West Aurora High School. Someone deliberately took a photo from the internet, added text, and then sent it around the school, causing panic for students, staff, and families. This kind of conduct has to stop. Over the past few weeks, our department has been inundated with school threats. We investigate each one, but each one of those threats unnecessarily ties up valuable resources that might be needed elsewhere in the city. Not to mention the disruption of students learning and causing fear and concern across our communities. It should be noted that it's not just our department. Other jurisdictions across the region have been seeing a huge increase in these types of incidents. Aurora sits in 4 counties. Our 4 public school districts are in several different police jurisdictions. And although each police department could not all be here tonight, we stand unified with the same message. Those of you who choose to participate in this type of activity, we will hold you accountable for your actions. I would now like to invite Deputy Chief of the North Aurora Police Department, Scott Mazzetti, to the podium.
Good evening. I would like to stress that there was no specific threats against any schools in North Aurora, but out of an abundance of caution and to put students, staff, and parents at ease, we increased police presence at and around schools in our community, especially during arrival and dismissal periods. Our officers and investigators take threats of violence seriously and will work with our law enforcement and school partners to thoroughly investigate and prosecute such threats as appropriate. Finally, if you're aware of a threat towards any school, please call 911 as soon as possible. Anonymous tips may be left on our tip line by calling 630-897-8705 and choosing option 2, or send an email to tips@northaurora.org. With that, I'd like to turn it over to King County State Attorney Jamie Nelson.
Good evening. I'm here to show that we have a strong partnership with our schools and with law enforcement in adequately responding and prosecuting these matters. These are not a joke. This is not something that we can pass off as a childish game or something that is done accidentally. This is done with a goal in mind, and it has very traumatic results as a result of it. When people choose to do this, it is a felony offense in Illinois of disorderly conduct. And whether it is an adult doing this or whether it is a juvenile, we will prosecute these cases. I can speak on behalf of the 4 county state's attorneys here that are over Aurora, as well as many other state's attorneys throughout all of Illinois, in saying that these are cases that we will prosecute as fully as we possibly can in juvenile court as well as in adult court. The trauma that children suffer when they are being told that they have to hide because there is a potential threat is something that cannot be undone. And it is something that we consider whenever we go forward with the prosecution of this matter. And so I join here today with the law enforcement as well as with schools to say that we will do everything that we can to continue to support our schools, to support police, and to make sure that people understand that this is something that will be taken serious and will have serious consequences. So to that, I now turn this over to Dr. Adrian Talley.
Good evening. My name is Adrian Talley, and I am the superintendent of Indian Prairie School District 204. About 46% of my students are Aurora students. Tonight I want to talk about another partner. You've heard already the police are our partners, the state's attorney is a partner, and another partner, of course, are parents. And tonight I want to mention to parents about a responsibility you have for us that will help us in the work we're trying to do. And that is reviewing and looking at your child's social media. It's important that you spend time reviewing your child's social media accounts. Children have many different accounts that they have access to, from Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Every night you should be reviewing what's on your child's telephone. Every night you should be looking at what's on their social media accounts. Without doing so, your children can be texting, speaking to, engaging with things that you have no knowledge of. And that is why it's important that you spend some time reviewing the social media accounts. It is also very easy for you as a parent, working with your provider for your cell phone, to have parental safeguards put in. If you go to Apple, if you have an Apple iPhone, you're able to pull up their parent safeguards. Even programs such as Bark, which is an app that you can use, will help you ensure that your children are being safe when they're accessing and using social media sites. Also, it's important that you understand that not all information on social media sites are going to be accurate. Spend some time finding out the truth before becoming alarmed about it. It's very important that we don't continue to spread rumors, falsehoods, non-factual information. That's going to be important. And finally, it's important that we hold people accountable when they do post information that is damaging, threatening to other people. Finally, I say to you, if you find out that you have information, go to the tip line. All 3 of our school districts have them. The police have them, as the police chief has already mentioned. We're here, but we need your help in this work. Thank you, and I'll now turn it to Dr. Craig.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I'm going to kind of wrap this up a little bit, but I just want to draw the attention back. Even though the numbers that you see in front of you tonight are small, we represent a large portion of this part of the county and this part of the state, which represents a lot of families and a lot of students. You know, as I've had the opportunity to and currently serve as the chairperson for the Aurora Education Commission, which allows us to collaborate with all of our public and private school districts throughout the Aurora area. So I want to share some more global thoughts. You know, we encourage, no matter what school you go to, what district you go to, what county you may reside in. And you've heard this a little bit already tonight, but I want to re-emphasize, if you see something, say something. And to help you say something, there are some options. Your building principal is one. You can call, as you heard, you can call your local law enforcement. Or another way you can go through is our statewide crisis, 24/7 crisis line, Safe to Help. One of the things that, even though we've had a lot of education, we are not mind readers. And so we cannot respond or resolve problems unless we know about them. That includes police, state's attorney's office, school administration. We need to know. One of the things that I want to really try to communicate is that this is a community-wide effort. This is not the police chief, this is not the state's attorney, this is not the superintendent or the principal. You've heard tonight about parents, siblings. We need everyone's support in this to move this forward. The Aurora Area School Safety Team will implement a common avenue for sharing incidents happening as we see the circulation of old posts like we saw today from El Paso, Texas. And finally, we are fast approaching winter break in many of our neighboring school districts. And it's our intent to do so in a safe and successful manner. And we really hope that our students and our community hears the message so that we can move ahead with our mission that we are absolutely charged with, and that's providing a high-quality education in a safe environment for all of our students in all of our schools and all of our districts. We appreciate your time. At this time, if you have any questions, the group will help field those.
Dr. Craig, can you talk a little bit more about this photo? Did you track it to a certain student? Where does that particular situation stand?
So I can tell you, and I'll hand this back to Chief Cross. We have narrowed it down to several, and so our police partners are in the process of investigating. But yes, we do have it narrowed down to a group.
A group of students currently at Aurora West High School, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you have anyone in custody that you're questioning?
There's no one in custody right now.
Still ongoing investigation.
How many students received the picture?
More than a few. I mean, there were several. I wouldn't say it was, astronomical number, but enough that when they received them, they came to administration to share that they received it.
Can you tell us about the conditions inside the school when all of this was going on? I'm assuming students were still able to participate in classes, but what was going on inside the school?
So, I mean, from a perspective, if you were to walk in, it would have been very quiet. Normally with almost 4,000 people in a building, it would be lots of activity. The hold in place and teach is very specific terminology that I want people to grab a hold of. Some of the old terminology is a little outdated and not appropriate, but we do hold them in their classrooms and we do continue on with the teaching and learning aspect. You would have seen administrators, you would have seen staff, and you would have seen our police partners supporting safety in those hallways. So if you were to have a visual, not a lot of students, but a lot of adults trying to make sure that we were following up on the process.
So when you speak of that terminology, are you saying you will prefer hold in place instead of the school is on lockdown?
Very much different meaning. We use the ALICE philosophy. We coordinate that with our various police agencies and a lot of our school districts in the area. And so there's a very different approach when we say hold in place and teach. That means your activities within their classroom remains fairly normal. Lockdowns or other such directions gives a little more dire direction to try to flee, try to fight, try to barricade, and that wasn't the case here because we did not have an active assailant.
Last question for me. The state attorney mentioned this trauma on these children cannot be undone, even the threat. Obviously, in the moment, you take it very seriously. Can you describe that a little bit for people, people that don't have young children that can't really relate? Are people crying? Are kids yelling? Are they upset? You know what I mean?
Talking about during the
Yeah,
holding place
when
today?
when you're investigating and they know they're being held in place and class is still underway, but it's certainly not normal, right?
Yes, and these wonderful devices, kids are using those to communicate, ask questions, assume certain things, which is why it was very, very important that we update our information, not only to our administrators, to our parents, and to our staff, but also to our students, because that's a great conduit for communication and information as well. I think the more you can communicate and fill the void of lack of information, it kind of takes down that sense of anxiety and angst. And I think that's a real important. We saw that in previous large incidents around our communities. With the lack of information, people will fill those voids with their own information.
Can somebody please speak to students specifically sharing these messages online? I'm not speaking of the students initially putting them out there, but the fact that they're sharing them, that's how they're becoming viral. I don't know if anybody spoke to that yet. Have you all warned students not to share this information, to reach out to police, reach out to their parents, to make sure it's investigated, but when you share it, that adds more to the problem, if you all agree?
I'll quickly speak to that. I spoke about social media, and I think it was Dr. Craig who mentioned airdrops. So just be mindful of everything that your phone can do. You know some things, but our children know even more about what they're capable of doing. And so the children are sharing a lot of information. And so that's why looking at the phone, spending time as parents, seeing every night what pictures your children have, the access that they have to different sites, that's going to be very important. And so it is very hard to stop that sharing. I mean, you think about, you share one, and it's shared by hundreds of other children. It's on site. I think we really have to be very mindful of all of that and understand that this is where we are right now, and it's not where we want to be. So we have to reel it back in as the adults who are paying the phone bills for the phones and who bought the phones for our children. What are we doing as the adults in this situation?
If I could also mention one more thing about the sharing, it's really a double-edged sword too, because if this was a credible threat, we would want people to share that information with us. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You ask students not to share the information when somebody is running around school with a gun. You know, that's gonna delay our response, and you don't want to see people get hurt. So it is a fine line, you know, if that makes sense.
I know that, one of the things that parents need to be aware of is that our school districts have multiple ways to monitor this kind of behavior. And Gaggle is one of the more popular ones that school districts use across the country. And what that does, and kids don't realize that until they're knocking on the door of their home, is that they monitor the things that are sent through student accounts and their student email addresses even, not just their cell phone activity. And so as those things are shared, that monitoring triggers the school district. And we've been able to work highly successfully with the Aurora Police Department. And we've had the police be able to show up at the home of a student who shared a photo of a threat. This happened about a week and a half ago, and it was 9 o'clock at night, and they knocked on the home. The parents had no idea that the student and this particular student and their brother were sharing. So they were able to determine that it was not a real threat, and then we were able to discipline that student. And most students don't know that we're able to do that. We are able to locate their IP addresses. So they need to take this seriously.
Anything else? I think you're coming.
I'm good. Thank you.
I'm gonna have them stop.
I'll give you the
That's
card.
not an unreasonable amount of.
Can we call it Aurora Police?
Yes.
Okay.